Erica Leon, registered dietitian and certified eating disorders dietitian, and I'm here with a wonderful guest tonight, Lisa Ellis, who is a dear colleague and who is also an eating disorders dietitian, registered dietitian, and a licensed clinical social worker. So hello, Lisa. We're going to be speaking tonight about managing the holidays when under stress and managing your eating disorders. So, hello.
Hi there. Yeah. So, the holidays can be a little tricky for people. It's kind of, you're out of your normal routine,
Absolutely.
your day-to-day routine. So, yeah.
A lot of people have been expressing a lot of anxiety to me in my office, really worrying about what's going to happen when they come into the Thanksgiving meal, whether there's someone who's been in a restrictive eating disorder and they're still on a meal plan, or people who really are just struggling with trying not to sort of pig out at the Thanksgiving meal. So maybe we should just start with one scenario. What about the client that is in recovery right now that is really working on, they're following a meal plan, they're stressed out about what their family's going to say to them or what might happen at the table? What advice would you have for those clients?
I usually suggest that people do some prep. Think about it beforehand. What might people say so they can plan some answers, maybe write them down so they can kind of refer to them if they need them. Mm-hmm. If they're able to choose their seat, if they can choose to sit near somebody who's more supportive, not somebody who's going to nag them and trigger them, but somebody who's more supportive can be a very helpful thing as well.
Not someone who's going to say, you look really skinny, here, have another piece of pie.
Exactly. Not someone who's going to comment at all, because what I always say is, you know what, somebody else doesn't belong in your food garden. That's yours. Right? They belong in your own.
Absolutely. I think it's one of the biggest pitfalls that I notice, and even, frankly, even with my own family, it's so hard for people not to comment. It's like this diet culture is everywhere, and like we have license, it's Thanksgiving, there's license to binge. And so it doesn't matter what you're eating, how much you're eating, people will be talking about their diets. Do you find that? People talking about their own?
Absolutely. There's just such judgment that comes along with it. Mm-hmm. I often wonder if when the Indians and the Pilgrims were sitting down at the table, was there this kind of judgment? I doubt it. They weren't focusing on who was eating what. They were focusing on the entire experience, which is something I really suggest that people do. Think to themselves what they're grateful for, perhaps. Mm-hmm. Think about maybe what else is going on. What else is the meal about? Maybe they want to meet someone new at the table. The food doesn't need to be the focus.
That's a good point. Although, when someone is really recovering, it can be so filled with anxiety. So I guess as a therapist, I'm wondering if you have any suggestions for someone when they literally walk in and they're feeling kind of overwhelmed. They see all the food and it's kind of scary. What advice would you give someone in those circumstances?
So, sometimes people have something that they can put in their pocket and kind of squeeze, like a little squishy ball, something to hold on to and squeeze to distract you a little bit. Sometimes people can use something like jacks because they're sharp. They have like little points on them and you can roll them between your hands. It kind of just distracts you a little bit from the visual and brings you back to what's in your hands, and it acts as a little bit of a distraction. So something like that could be useful.
Seems like kind of grounding, like, okay, I'm here. Yeah. I'm holding something, I'm here. I can give that to you.
Counting light bulbs in the room. I mean, something as little as counting light bulbs in the room. It's a distraction.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point. What about when someone has been really trying so hard to let go of diets and they're working on intuitive eating skills and they come in and that table is just bombarding them? I mean, it's going to be happening. And, how does one sort of manage to not binge when everyone else is? It's sort of legalized binging, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, I often tell people to kind of visualize what they think they might want their plate to look like. That could be a plate of sweet potatoes or mashed potatoes or whatever they want, whatever goal they want to set for themselves. They can kind of either color it out, like write it out beforehand, or just visualize it, close their eyes, and think about what they might want their plate to look like. And you know, we know that if you visualize things, you're more likely to kind of follow through in that direction. So visualizing your own plate, regardless of what everyone else takes, that's your own plate. Each person has their own plate.
Yeah, you know, I also kind of like the idea. I've been doing this of just sort of surveying the scene, looking and seeing what's on the table, and kind of walking in and really remembering to be mindful, to smell what's the enjoyable smells, to look at the colors instead of just focusing, oh my God, I'm going to eat everything. Just kind of slowing down and kind of seeing, there's 5 desserts. I wonder which one of those is going to taste the best.
Absolutely. And it's such a good point. By walking through and seeing everything that's there, you can decide and choose which things you might want to put on your plate. You know, if you just see the first thing and you think maybe I want that, but then you see something else and you think, well, actually, maybe I want that. So kind of taking a survey of the room and what's out there can be very helpful. If it starts to get overwhelming, I like what you suggested. Often I tell people to think of 3 things they can see, 3 things they can smell, 3 things they can hear as a grounding experience. And it helps to reduce the anxiety just a little bit.
I'm going to remember that. And you know what happens when that Aunt Mary is making comments about your body, and she says, you know, you look so good, you've lost so much weight. What do you? That's actually very triggering, if you ask me. Why
yeah.
On your body, but you know it's going to happen. You know it's going to happen somewhere, somehow.
Absolutely. And you know, she might mean well by it, but it is certainly very triggering. And finding a way to kind of end it and get to something else, you know, something like, oh, Aunt Mary, you know, well, let's talk about oh, my new dog. I have a new puppy. And start talking about something else. So if you kind of write down a couple of other topics that you can go to, kind of your go-to topics, if people start to have conversation, that's a little bit triggering.
That's kind of setting up. Yeah, thinking about what you want to talk about so that you can move the conversation away if it gets intense. I like that.
Absolutely. Or you physically remove yourself from the room for a minute. And sometimes that is something that, you know, is really helpful, especially if the person doesn't get it and won't stop. Then you can take yourself out of the room for a minute, kind of regroup. Have you ever said to someone, you know, I really don't want to talk about your diet. I really don't want to hear about how many pounds you've lost or, you know, what you're eating or, you know, your free diet or whatnot. I mean, it's kind of hard to do, but I think it's very important to be assertive. Absolutely. You know, the way I've done is I'll just, you know, kind of step in and say, well, actually, you know, why don't we talk about this? And if they bring it up again, I'll say, you know, actually, I really want to talk about this, you know, and just keep setting that firm boundary. So I may not say to them, I don't want to talk about what you're talking about, but I give them that message. And I just keep saying it again. No, actually, you know what? The dog. I like it. It's just holding the boundary firm. It's very hard to hold that boundary firm when somebody is kind of coming at you. I almost envision putting Teflon on. Oh, I like that. Taylor, put on your Teflon, and they can say can get through. And so keep setting the boundary, setting the boundary, setting the boundary. Yeah, I like that. And I think that it's very empowering, makes you feel really like you can take good care of yourself. Absolutely. Absolutely. And, you know, maybe just also remember that even though your family might have flaws, because, you know, everyone's flawed, that they do love you and that they do mean the best. Yes. And that I guess when someone keeps talking about their own diets and their own bodies and weight, kind of really shows you where their heads are, you know? Yes, and it sort of, if it's a family member, it kind of makes sense. Like
Yeah.
you can say, all right, I kind of came by this honestly. I get it, but I'm going to do things differently.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's invariably one relative or another who will make a comment like, "You look so good. You've lost so much weight." And you
Mhm.
know what? The first thing it makes a person think is, "Oh my God, what did I look like before?" They must have thought I really looked bad. I mean, it's just that living in this environment with this diet culture, you
Yes.
can, here it is, the beginning, almost Thanksgiving, and you see commercials already on television for all the diet programs. This is going to be the
Absolutely, absolutely, and
beginning of the end.
is the culture, and setting firm boundaries for ourselves and standing up against the culture. It's something that's hard, but it's something that we all need to just do. Keep doing and keep setting that boundary, and telling Aunt Mary or whatever. Yeah, actually, Aunt Mary, let's talk about. Oh, I love your dress, Aunt Mary.
Mhm.
That's beautiful. Your hair looks so pretty today.
Tell me,
Finding a way.
I'm just curious. I know I'm changing the subject for a minute. I'm jumping around, but what do you tell your clients who you're working with um, about listening to their bodies? Because we talk about mindfulness and trying to start to paying attention to our own levels of hunger and fullness. So I'm
Mhm.
just wondering what strategies you may have for your clients in terms of, again, going back to being a little bit more mindful at the table.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes I talk about what their intention is for the meal. Do they have any thoughts as to what their intention is? Um, and then I will ask them to rate their hunger kind of in the middle, at
Mhm.
the beginning, the middle, and then the end, just because it can be a little overwhelming and it helps to bring a little bit more awareness to exactly where you are. And you can
Mhm.
make decisions based on that. But I think having that extra, that kind of mid meal check in with yourself can be a useful thing.
Yeah, that's a good idea because, it's just with so much food, it's so easy to just sit and kind of just keep eating when everyone else, sort of the rhythm of the room is people are eating. And all of a sudden you get up and it's like, oh my God, I just had a belly full. Like I didn't even realize. So
Yes.
yeah, yeah, sort of slowing down between really, and even between bites.
Yes. Yes. Definitely. Having some conversation, slowing down, being more mindful, being aware. Again, throughout the meal, the sights, the sounds. It's not just about the food.
You're right. And it's about the company and the gratitude. Even for our family and friends who may be flawed, they're still wonderful and we love them and we have gratitude for them. And
Absolutely.
and I have to say for all the things that our own bodies do for us, we talk a lot about when working on letting go of diets, people do worry about their body image and worrying about what's going to happen if they're eating and they potentially gain some weight. So,
Yes.
what would you say in terms of how using gratitude can be helpful for someone in that situation?
Oh, that's a great question. So, first of all, let me just back up just a smidge. So, at my Thanksgiving table, I always start by going around and having everyone just, if they want, just to say whatever it is that they feel grateful for that year.
That's
Um,
nice.
and it's just kind of the way to open up the conversation and everyone bonds a little. And, especially if you don't know someone else at the table and you can hear something that they say that might sound similar to yours or intriguing to you. So, I always start my meal that way.
Hmm.
Um, the other thing is, in terms of gratitude, thinking about what one's body can do for them as opposed to their body, how their body presents. So I was working with a client who um, was saying to me that she wasn't that fond of her legs. And I said, well, what can your legs do for you? I said, are you in a wheelchair? And she said, no. And I said, so what does that mean? She said, that means my legs can carry me places. I said, yes, it does. And so we kind of paid gratitude to the fact that her legs are strong and that they can carry her places. And it gave her just a little bit of a different way to look at it.
Hmm. Yeah, it's easy to get caught up in that and not to and sort of lose perspective of what is really important, which is that you're there. You're there.
Yes.
You're walking, your legs are moving, your heart
Yes.
is beating, and you're there in the moment just as you are.
Yeah.
And you are perfectly perfect just the way you are.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, that's a very nice thing to think about. Gratitude.
Gratitude. And, I mean, we can expand that to, something I'm grateful for, this year, or something I am grateful for in terms of, um, I love to volunteer, because to me that just brings pleasure to me. So I like to think about, I'm grateful that I was able to volunteer and help this person. And so gratitude takes on so many different meanings, and it's so individualized.
Yes. I have to say that I feel so grateful for the work that I do because it's so fulfilling. And there are so many people who go to work and don't really enjoy the jobs that they do. It makes me sad. I feel like I'm the luckiest person in the world because work doesn't feel like work.
I'm
Yeah,
with
that is
you.
definitely something to be grateful for.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And to work with lovely people like you.
And you, it is nice.
It is, it's very nice. So, sort of to summarize, um, we had to sort of knock it down to just a couple of sort of reminders.
Hmm.
How about you go first, and then I'll go.
Yeah, sure. So first of all, I remind people not to restrict earlier in the day.
Good one.
Yeah. So that's not helpful. It's not going to help anybody meet any type of goals that they have.
What happens if someone restricts in preparation for the big feast? What's the usual thing that's going to happen to them?
Restriction leads to binging. I mean, it's just a cycle. And it's like, and people get down on themselves, but it's like a biological thing. And so, yeah, so not starting out by restricting
Mm-hmm.
is really important. It's really important. And taking care of yourself. Do something kind for yourself, especially if you feel like your table is going to be a more stressful place.
Mm-hmm.
To do something special for yourself, maybe right before, or special for yourself right after. It's something that you could focus on. If the dynamics are difficult, you can focus on doing this special thing for yourself after.
I like that. No, what I want to bring up, along with the point you're making about don't restrict beforehand, is you know on many things that you'll be reading about tips to manage Thanksgiving, you'll be seeing things like restricting beforehand and exercising, to make up for the Thanksgiving meal. And I think that also sets a person up for binging. The notion of, that you have to exercise to deserve a meal.
Yeah.
Other
Yes.
eating disordered thinking.
Yeah.
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 Exercise.
Nothing of it as a regular day.
Just a
Just like
regular
every day.
day. You either exercise or you don't. You move because it feels good. Maybe it's a gentle walk in the woods, or maybe it's a stretching class. Whatever it may be, it's something that feels good. It is not
Absolutely.
punishment.
But I think the key is to not do it as a compensatory.
Thank you. So that's a good reminder. And to approach the day like any, it's just one meal. Just to realize that we build it up in our heads, but it's really just one meal. It's like a regular, whether it be lunch, whether it be dinner, it's just a meal.
It
And
is just a meal,
just
but
a,
it's so hyped up. And so people kind of, I think, get caught up in that frenzy, but
Mhm.
it is just a meal. It's one of the many meals that we'll eat.
Absolutely. And by the way, you said talked about restricting beforehand. I'm
Hmm.
going to say also the next day, doesn't
Yeah.
matter what you've eaten. By the way, even if you've eaten more than you planned to or wanted to, your body has ways of making up for any mistakes in our eating. And so tomorrow, the day after Thanksgiving, is just another day. I mean, I know it's Black Friday shopping, but it's just another day. And one doesn't have to change their eating.
Absolutely not. Just another day, regular, absolutely going back to just eating that feels right for them, gentle nutrition.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we're all set for Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving, Thanksgiving is, I think that it gets such hype just because it's like right before the shopping season, and it's, kind of everything kind of comes together around it. But, and doing it with just a matter of gratitude. I mean, it really is about being grateful, right?
It really is. That is the original purpose of Thanksgiving. We're giving thanks. And
Yeah.
so we are giving thanks to the people around us. We're giving thanks to ourselves and our bodies for working and being there for us. And by the way, having the wisdom that our brain doesn't always allow us to have. Our bodies are often smarter than our brains.
Yes.
Means that
I'm sorry?
Our bodies just are wise. They give us information. They let us know when we're full. They let us know when we're hungry. If you listen.
Exactly. The cues are there if you listen to them. And kind of going along with this is just body kindness as well, along with the gratitude. It's just being kind to yourself.
Absolutely. And just to remember that, I like to think that any quote unquote mistakes that anyone may make are just learning experiences. You just learn something about yourself, learn about the moment, learn about the food combinations, whatever it may be. No mistakes, just learning experiences and being with family and friends. And I like that gratitude.
Yes.
Okay. So let's end on a note of gratitude. Thank you for joining me tonight. And I hope that this is helpful to some of you people out there. And thanks again.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Same to you. Have a nice evening. Bye, Lisa.
Bye-bye.